What if the most powerful recovery ritual for your body tonight is not expensive, not rare, and not hidden behind a locked glass shelf at a pharmacy? What if it has been sitting in your kitchen this whole time, in a dark bottle you barely notice, while your body has been asking for help in silence? That question sounds almost too simple, and that is exactly why so many people ignore it. We have been trained to believe that meaningful health changes must feel complicated. They must come with dramatic packaging, secret formulas, and promises stamped in gold lettering. But sometimes the thing that matters most is the thing you have grown too familiar to respect. If you are over 60, you already know this in your bones, even if no one has said it out loud. Recovery is different now. Sleep is lighter. Joints speak first thing in the morning. Energy can vanish for no obvious reason. A good day still feels possible, but it no longer feels automatic. And beneath all of that is a deeper fear most people never name directly. They are not just worried about feeling tired tomorrow. They are worried about losing ground little by little until one day they realize the body they trusted is no longer answering them the same way. That is why tonight's conversation matters. Not because olive oil is magic. It is not. Not because one spoonful erases aging. It will not. But because researchers studying inflammation, circulation, metabolism, and brain aging have been quietly uncovering something that deserves far more attention than it gets. When extra virgin olive oil is used at the right time, especially in the evening, it may support several of the body's most important overnight repair systems. And that idea changes everything, because the night is when your body does work you never see. Between midnight and dawn, you are not simply resting. Your brain is clearing waste. Your liver is processing the chemical leftovers of the day. Your muscles are trying to repair microscopic damage. Your immune system is recalibrating. Your blood vessels are responding to hormonal shifts that can either protect you or strain you. In other words, the hours you spend asleep are not empty hours. They are maintenance hours. They are rebuilding hours. They are the private shift your body works while you disappear into the dark. And after a certain age, that shift becomes less efficient, not because your body stops caring, but because it lacks the signals and building blocks it once had in abundance. I want you to imagine a city at 2 in the morning. Streets are mostly empty. Repair crews finally have space to work. Broken lights can be replaced. Pipes can be inspected. Debris can be cleared before rush hour returns. But if the equipment does not arrive, or if the workers are slowed by flooding, congestion, or missing supplies, the damage remains. Morning comes anyway. People wake up anyway. The city keeps moving anyway. But it is moving on top of neglected repairs. That is what aging can look like from the inside. You keep functioning. You keep showing up. But too many small repairs are being delayed for too long. This is where that dark bottle on the counter starts to matter in a new way. High-quality extra virgin olive oil is more than a cooking fat. It contains oleic acid along with plant compounds called polyphenols, including oleocanthal and hydroxytyrosol. These compounds have attracted scientific attention because of how they interact with inflammation, oxidative stress, blood vessels, gut bacteria, and the brain itself. In plain language, they appear to help create better internal conditions for repair. Not dramatic overnight transformation, better conditions. And better conditions, repeated consistently, can alter the direction of aging more than most people realize. Now here's the part that surprises almost everyone. The timing may matter almost as much as the oil itself. Most people think of olive oil as something you drizzle over vegetables at lunch or use in a pan at dinner. Few think about it as part of an evening ritual. Yet the night may be the most strategic moment of all, because that is when repair systems come online and when inflammation, vascular stress, and blood sugar instability can quietly interfere. Used before bed or alongside the final meal of the evening, olive oil may act less like a random food and more like a signal, a nudge, a message to the body that says, the overnight shift has what it needs to start. Tonight matters. Poor sleep after 60 is often dismissed as normal aging, but normal does not mean harmless. When you wake 3 times a night, when your mind feels foggy by afternoon, when your body never seems fully restored in the morning, the problem is not simply inconvenience. Poor sleep changes appetite, memory, inflammation, pain sensitivity, blood pressure, and even the speed at which the brain clears waste. That means one restless night does not stay in the bedroom. It follows you into your mood, your balance, your cravings, and your resilience the next day. Then it repeats, then it compounds. So tonight we are counting down 7 ways extra virgin olive oil may support the aging body after dark, starting with the benefit most people underestimate and ending with the one that made many researchers rethink what everyday food can do over a lifetime. Some of these effects are practical, some are surprising. One may even change how we think about protecting the brain after 60. But to understand that final revelation, you first need to see what happens when the nervous system is inflamed, the body is tired, and sleep begins slipping away. Because the first benefit does not begin in the stomach, the heart, or even the muscles. It begins in the brain, and in the silent inflammation that may be stealing your deepest sleep before you ever realize it. If you have ever climbed into bed exhausted, closed your eyes, and still found yourself waking again at 1, then 3, then 5, you already understand how cruel broken sleep can be. It is not just fatigue, it is a kind of theft. It steals patience, steadiness, and clear thinking. It makes simple tasks feel heavier than they should. And for many older adults, it brings a private loneliness, because everyone around them assumes sleep is simple, while they lie in the dark wondering why their body no longer knows how to stay asleep. What makes this even more frustrating is that poor sleep in later life is often blamed on stress alone. Stress matters, of course, but it is not the whole story. In many aging adults, one of the hidden drivers is low-grade neuroinflammation, a persistent inflammatory state in the brain that can interfere with melatonin signaling and the deeper sleep stages that the body depends on for repair. Think of it like static in an electrical system. The current still moves, but the signal is distorted. The instruction to settle into deep, restorative sleep is being sent, yet the message arrives weakened. This is where extra virgin olive oil becomes surprisingly interesting. One of its best-known compounds, oleocanthal, is the reason a good olive oil can create that peppery sting in the back of the throat. That sensation is not a flaw. It is a clue. Oleocanthal has been studied for anti-inflammatory activity, especially for its interaction with pathways linked to cyclooxygenase enzymes, the same general family of inflammatory pathways targeted by common pain relievers. No, olive oil is not the same as medication, and it should never be treated as a replacement for medical care. But the possibility that a food compound can help quiet inflammatory signaling at night is exactly what makes the bedtime timing so compelling. Picture your brain as a house preparing for delicate repairs after midnight. Lights dim, systems slow, cleanup begins. But if inflammation is still sparking in the wiring, the crew cannot do its finest work. Deep sleep shortens, micro-awakenings increase. Morning comes, yet the repair was incomplete. Night after night, that pattern can leave a person feeling as if sleep happened without restoration. You may have been unconscious for hours, but the true benefit of sleep never fully arrived. Some studies examining olive oil polyphenols have suggested improvements in markers related to sleep quality and overall inflammatory balance, especially when these compounds are used consistently as part of a Mediterranean-style dietary pattern. That last point matters. Olive oil is not a bedtime trick detached from the rest of life. It works best as part of a larger pattern. Still, the evening may be a strategic moment to use it because it places those compounds into circulation when the body is trying to shift from defense into repair. A simple approach many people use is 1 tablespoon of high-quality extra virgin olive oil about 30 minutes before bed. Not refined olive oil, not a bland bottle with no aroma and no peppery finish. The deeper-colored, fresh-tasting, cold-extracted kind is usually preferred because the very compounds being discussed are most abundant when the oil is well-made and minimally processed. Some people take it straight. Others stir it into a little warm water. Some pair it with a small amount of tart cherry juice, which is naturally associated with melatonin support. The goal is not theatrical. It is gentle consistency. Now, if you are skeptical, that is healthy. You should be. The wellness world has sold too many miracles and delivered too little. But skepticism should not become blindness. There is a difference between a fantasy cure and a modest intervention that meaningfully improves internal conditions. If a nightly habit costing very little can slightly lower inflammatory pressure and slightly improve sleep continuity, then over months, those slight improvements may stop being slight. Better sleep influences pain perception. Better sleep supports insulin sensitivity. Better sleep sharpens memory. Better sleep improves balance, mood, and repair. In aging, small gains do not stay small for long. And if you have blamed yourself for that exhaustion, stop for a moment, because your body may be signaling distress, not weakness. And yet, sleep is only the beginning, because while you are asleep, another system enters one of its most vulnerable windows, the cardiovascular system. Many people assume the heart is safest at rest, but some of the most dangerous hours for blood vessels come in the darkness before dawn. Blood pressure patterns shift, hormones surge, arteries, especially aging arteries, can become less flexible at precisely the wrong time. That means what is moving through your bloodstream at night may matter more than people realize. Consider this. Not all cholesterol-related damage is about the amount of LDL alone. Oxidation changes the story. When LDL becomes oxidized, it is more likely to contribute to the processes that damage arterial walls. Oleic acid, the main fat in olive oil, has long been of interest because of its role in healthier fat patterns, and because diets rich in extra virgin olive oil are repeatedly associated with better cardiovascular outcomes. Again, this is not magic. It is biology working in slow motion. Less oxidation, better endothelial support, lower inflammatory friction, a quieter internal environment when the arteries are under strain. If sleep was the door into this conversation, the heart is the hallway that changes its stakes. Because a restless night is miserable, but a night when your blood vessels are under silent pressure is something else entirely. And once you see why the hours between 3 and 6 in the morning matter so much for aging arteries, you begin to understand why some evening habits protect far more than comfort. The next benefit is not about feeling better tomorrow. It is about reducing the kind of hidden overnight stress that can shape what happens to your heart years from now. Between 3 and 6 in the morning, your body enters a window that most people sleep through without ever realizing how important it is. Hormones shift. Blood pressure begins to rise in preparation for waking. Circulation changes gears. In younger arteries, that transition is usually managed smoothly. In older arteries, especially when stiffness has increased over the years, the same transition can place far more strain on the cardiovascular system than anyone feels in the moment. That is one reason early morning hours have long drawn attention in heart research. The danger is not always noise or exertion. Sometimes the danger is the silent surge before sunrise. Arterial stiffness does not announce itself dramatically at first. It builds. Elastic walls gradually lose some of their flexibility. Each pulse has to travel through a system that gives less and resists more. The heart must push harder. The lining of the vessels experiences more friction. If oxidized lipids and inflammatory stress are also present, the conditions become even less forgiving. This is why the conversation around olive oil is about more than cholesterol numbers on a page. It is about what kind of environment your blood vessels are living in, especially during hours when repair and strain overlap. Extra virgin olive oil is rich in oleic acid, a monounsaturated fat studied for its relationship to healthier lipid patterns and reduced oxidative stress. Just as important are the polyphenols, which appear to help protect lipoproteins from oxidation and support endothelial function, the ability of blood vessels to relax and respond appropriately. Imagine two roads after a storm. One is cracked, narrowed, and filled with debris. The other is not perfect, but crews cleared the surface and traffic can still move. The same amount of traffic behaves very differently depending on road conditions. Blood works the same way. The state of the vessel matters as much as what is moving through it. What makes nighttime interesting is that the liver does much of its metabolic sorting and packaging work while you sleep. That includes key elements of lipid handling. So when olive oil is consumed in the evening, especially in place of more inflammatory late-night foods, It may support a more stable internal climate during those hours. Not a dramatic event, a shift in background conditions. And with aging, background conditions decide more than people think. There is another detail worth noticing. Many older adults end the day with snacks that quietly work against them. Sugary desserts, processed crackers, salty packaged foods, or late heavy meals create a completely different hormonal and inflammatory response than a lighter evening pattern centered on whole foods and healthy fats. Sometimes the benefit of adding olive oil is not only what olive oil does, it is also what it replaces. That is a principle too many people overlook. A protective habit often works because it changes the entire context around it. Some people pair a spoonful of extra virgin olive oil with a square of dark chocolate high in cacao, a combination often discussed because cacao flavonols and olive oil polyphenols both relate to vascular function. Others simply use the oil with dinner and avoid heavy eating afterward. What matters most is consistency and quality, not turning the ritual into something elaborate. If a habit becomes too complicated, most people will not keep it. But if it fits naturally into the final half hour of the evening, it has a chance to become part of real life. Then there is the matter of pain, and for many people over 60, pain is what truly controls the morning. They do not judge the day by ambition, they judge it by the first 10 steps out of bed. The knees decide, the hips decide, the lower back decides. A person can be mentally ready to live fully and still be physically negotiated into caution by stiffness before breakfast. When that happens day after day, confidence erodes, movement shrinks, strength follows. The body becomes smaller not just in capacity, but in the possibilities it offers. This is where the conversation turns from arteries to joints, and from circulation to friction. Joints are not passive hinges. They are living structures maintained by tissues that respond to inflammation, hormones, nutrients, and movement. Synovial fluid helps lubricate motion. Cartilage helps distribute force. The surrounding tissues coordinate stability and glide. But with age, inflammation can accelerate wear while repair slows. You begin to feel the cost of years not as a memory, but as resistance each time you stand. Olive oil has drawn attention here too, particularly because the same compounds associated with anti-inflammatory activity may influence the signaling that contributes to joint degradation. For some people, that sounds abstract until morning proves otherwise. They do not care about pathways. They care about whether they can walk to the mailbox without bracing. They care about whether they can turn in bed without hip pain. They care about whether a staircase feels like a staircase or a warning. That is why some of the most valuable changes in later life feel almost invisible at first. They appear quietly as easier mornings, steadier walks, and a trust that your body has not finished helping you yet. And the timing matters again, because much of the body's tissue repair is coordinated during the first phases of deep sleep, when growth-related signals are more active and inflammatory noise ideally falls. If that repair window opens while the body has support on board rather than chaos, the difference may show up not at midnight, but at 7 in the morning when your feet meet the floor. What happens next is where many people lean closer, because cardiovascular protection is reassuring, but waking up with less stiffness feels personal immediately. And once you understand why the joints of aging adults can become trapped in a cycle of inflammation and under repair, you see why a small evening ritual might change more than comfort. It might change movement itself. For someone who wakes with stiff knees, aching fingers, or a lower back that feels older than the rest of the body, the morning can become a quiet negotiation before the day has even started. You sit on the edge of the bed and wait. You test the first steps carefully. You measure the day not by what you hope to do, but by what your joints will allow. That may sound like a minor adjustment from the outside. It is not. It changes your willingness to move, your confidence in your body, and eventually, your independence. Joint tissue is constantly balancing breakdown and repair. Cartilage absorbs force. Synovial tissue produces fluid that reduces friction. Muscles around the joint provide stability and help guide movement. But with age, chronic low-grade inflammation can tilt the balance toward breakdown. The body is still attempting maintenance, yet the environment keeps interrupting the work. Imagine sanding a wooden floor while someone keeps spilling grit across the surface. No matter how careful the repair, friction keeps returning. This is one reason researchers have paid so much attention to olive oil compounds such as oleocanthal. Their anti-inflammatory behavior may help reduce some of the chemical signaling associated with tissue irritation and degeneration. That does not mean a spoonful of oil rebuilds a badly damaged joint. It means the body may be better able to maintain what remains when inflammatory pressure is lower. That distinction is important because many people give up on simple habits when they do not feel miraculous. But health after 60 is rarely about miracles. It is about preserving function before more is lost. Many older adults notice that pain is worst after inactivity, especially overnight. That makes sense. Hours without movement can leave joints feeling thick, stiff, and reluctant. If inflammation is part of the reason, then evening habits become more relevant than they appear. A tablespoon of extra virgin olive oil before bed, sometimes paired with warm water and lemon, has become a simple ritual for people trying to support overnight recovery. The lemon itself is not the story. The story is consistency and the possibility of giving the body a better anti-inflammatory environment while sleep-related repair is underway. Then something unexpected happens when joint discomfort begins to ease, even slightly. The person moves more, they walk farther, they become less afraid of stairs, they return to tasks they had unconsciously started avoiding, and movement itself improves joint health through circulation, lubrication, and strength. That is the hidden multiplier effect. Reduced pain creates more motion. More motion creates better function. Better function reduces decline. One small change begins echoing through other systems. But the joints are not the only place where olive oil may be doing important overnight work. Beneath the rib cage and beyond conscious awareness, the gut is running its own operation, one that affects far more than digestion. By the time many people reach their 70s, the microbial diversity in the gut often looks very different from what it was decades earlier. This matters because the gut is not just where food is processed. It is a major immune organ, a communication hub, and a gatekeeper that influences inflammation throughout the entire body. When the gut microbiome becomes less diverse and more imbalanced, the consequences can reach surprisingly far. Immunity can become less resilient. Inflammatory signals can increase. The gut barrier can weaken, allowing compounds to slip into circulation that should have stayed contained. Some researchers even link these changes to cognition and mood, which means a disturbed gut does not necessarily stay in the abdomen. It can alter how the whole body feels and functions. Olive oil polyphenols are interesting here because not all of them are absorbed early in digestion. Some travel onward, where they can interact with gut microbes more directly. Certain beneficial bacteria appear to thrive in the presence of these compounds, while less helpful populations may lose some advantage. In other words, the oil may not simply feed the person, it may help shape the internal ecosystem living inside that person. And since the gut performs important motility and cleansing activity during sleep, evening timing may once again be strategic. A gentle bedtime pairing many people use is extra virgin olive oil with chamomile tea. Chamomile is often associated with calm, but it is also valued for soothing digestive discomfort. Together, the ritual feels less like a supplement program and more like an invitation for the body to settle into repair. That matters because healing habits must feel livable if they are going to last longer than a week. Still, even gut balance is not the point that shocks most people. The moment that truly changes the conversation comes when olive oil is linked not only to comfort or digestion, but to muscle preservation. Because for adults over 60, muscle loss may be one of the most underestimated threats of aging. It affects balance, glucose control, posture, independence, and the ability to recover from almost any illness or injury. And it rarely announces itself dramatically at first. It begins quietly, with a weaker grip, a slower rise from a chair, a shorter walk than usual. And if you think that sounds exaggerated, Notice how often muscle loss first quietly announces itself through ordinary moments: carrying laundry, opening jars, rising from low chairs, steadying yourself on uneven ground. Those moments seem small until they start disappearing. Then you realize strength was never about appearance. It was your reserve, your insurance policy, your hidden savings account against frailty. Protecting it is not vanity. It is one of the clearest ways to defend freedom in later life. Once that decline starts, the body becomes more vulnerable in ways most people do not connect immediately. But there is a reason some researchers are asking whether simple nightly nutrition strategies can help protect muscle during the very hours when the body is programmed to rebuild it. And that question leads to the next revelation. Muscle loss after 60 is so common that many people treat it like weather. It is there, it is unpleasant, and they assume nothing can be done except accept it. But loss of muscle is not a cosmetic issue. It changes the outcome of aging. It influences whether you catch yourself during a fall or hit the floor. It determines how easily you climb stairs, carry groceries, rise from a chair, or recover after a hospital stay. It even affects blood sugar control, because muscle is one of the major places where glucose is handled efficiently. Lose enough muscle, and many other systems begin struggling with it. Part of the problem is something researchers often describe as anabolic resistance. In younger years, the body responds strongly to protein and movement with a clear repair signal: build, adapt, strengthen. With age, that same signal becomes quieter. The protein is eaten, but the muscles do not respond as robustly. The exercise is performed, but the gains come slower. It can feel as if the body heard the message only halfway. This is why the nighttime window matters. During sleep, especially in the earlier phases, hormones associated with repair and recovery help guide tissue rebuilding. If the body has both adequate amino acids and a lower inflammatory burden, muscle maintenance may proceed more effectively. That is where olive oil becomes part of a broader strategy rather than a standalone hero. Some studies suggest olive oil polyphenols may support pathways related to muscle preservation and oxidative balance. Combined with a modest source of slow-digesting protein in the evening, the effect may be more meaningful than either alone. That is why some people pair a tablespoon of extra virgin olive oil with Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, or another simple protein before bed. It is not glamorous. It is not trendy, but it aligns with a principle that often works in aging better than hype does. Give the body what it can actually use while it is trying to repair itself. A little protein for the building blocks, a little olive oil for the inflammatory environment, a little consistency so the signal is repeated often enough to matter. And when muscle holds on, life holds on with it. Balance improves. Walking becomes easier. Confidence returns in small but powerful ways. A person reaches for the top shelf again, carries a basket again, steps off a curb without that tiny flash of doubt again. That is the emotional side of muscle preservation people rarely talk about. Strength is not only mechanical, it is psychological. It changes how large your life still feels. Yet just when this story seems complete, another layer appears, and it may explain why several aging problems tend to travel together. Poor sleep, belly fat, morning fatigue, sugar cravings, brain fog, rising waistlines, and unstable energy often share one hidden companion: impaired blood sugar control. Many older adults go to bed thinking the day is done metabolically, but the body is still making critical decisions while they sleep. In people with insulin resistance, the early morning hours can bring what is often called the dawn rise, a surge of glucose released by the liver in preparation for waking. In a healthy system, insulin handles that release smoothly. In a resistant system, the surge can overshoot. Blood sugar climbs, vessels take damage, inflammation rises, and the cycle repeats. Over years, this contributes to risk far beyond diabetes alone. It touches the heart, the kidneys, the eyes, and even the brain. Olive oil may help here through several overlapping mechanisms. When used with an evening meal, healthy fat can slow gastric emptying, which helps prevent a rapid flood of glucose into the bloodstream. Over time, dietary patterns rich in extra virgin olive oil are also associated with better insulin sensitivity and improved metabolic markers in many studies, especially when they replace highly processed foods. Again, it is not a miracle by itself. It is a change in trajectory. Less volatility, fewer spikes, a steadier internal rhythm. Some people add a teaspoon of apple cider vinegar and water alongside an evening meal for additional support, since vinegar has also been studied for moderating post-meal glucose responses. The point is not to create a complicated ritual with 10 moving parts. The point is to build a bedtime pattern that does not sabotage the body's overnight metabolism. A calmer meal, less sugar, more stability, better raw materials for the work that begins after the lights go out. That is why metabolic health can feel so confusing in later life. A person may believe they are eating less than before and still watch their energy crash, their waistline thicken, and their lab numbers drift in the wrong direction. The body is not defying logic. It is responding to timing, muscle loss, stress hormones, sleep debt, and years of accumulated resistance. When people understand that, shame begins to loosen. They stop seeing blood sugar as a moral failure and start seeing it as a biological pattern that can be influenced. That shift matters because hopeless people rarely stay consistent. But people who understand the mechanism are far more willing to protect dinner, respect sleep, walk after meals, and use simple tools like olive oil before bed. And once the nights become steadier, the mornings stop feeling like punishments and start feeling like opportunities again. By now you can probably feel the pattern: sleep, heart, joints, gut, muscle, blood sugar. Each benefit seems separate at first, but they are all connected by one idea. The body does some of its most important work when you are no longer paying attention. That is why the final benefit matters more than all the others for many people, because it concerns the organ they fear losing most. Not the knees, not the waistline, not even the heart, the brain. And what happens inside the brain while you sleep may be the most extraordinary reason of all to take that dark bottle seriously. For many people, the deepest fear of aging is not wrinkles, stiffness, or even disease. It is disappearance. It is the thought of being physically present while memory, clarity, and identity begin slipping away. That fear is why the final benefit in this story carries such emotional weight. Because the brain is not passive during sleep. It enters a cleansing state so unusual and so important that when researchers began describing it in detail, it changed the way many scientists thought about nighttime itself. While you sleep, especially during deeper stages, spaces between brain cells appear to shift in a way that allows cerebrospinal fluid to move more effectively through brain tissue. This process is often described as part of the glymphatic system, a kind of nighttime clearance network that helps remove metabolic waste. Among the substances researchers care about most are proteins associated with neurodegenerative disease, including beta amyloid. The idea is both elegant and unsettling. Your brain has a cleaning system, but it works best when sleep is deep, inflammation is lower, and the pathways remain unobstructed. If those conditions degrade for years, waste may accumulate more easily. Now think back to everything we have already discussed. Poor sleep interferes with deep restoration. Neuroinflammation adds noise and disruption. Blood sugar instability fuels further damage. Vascular dysfunction affects delivery and clearance. Suddenly, the olive oil conversation is no longer about one isolated benefit. It becomes part of a broader strategy for protecting the environment in which the brain cleans itself. Researchers have been especially interested in olive oil polyphenols, such as oleocanthal and hydroxytyrosol, because of their relationships to inflammation, oxidative stress, vascular integrity, and possibly the blood-brain barrier, the protective interface that helps regulate what reaches brain tissue from the bloodstream. Animal studies have even suggested that extra virgin olive oil may be associated with less accumulation of harmful proteins and better cognitive performance compared with less protective dietary patterns. Human research is more complicated, as it always is, but the mechanisms are serious enough that the topic refuses to disappear. And here is why this matters personally to you. Brain decline rarely begins with a dramatic collapse. It begins subtly, A word goes missing. A name takes longer. Focus thins. Motivation feels foggier. You tell yourself it is normal, and sometimes it is. But across years, the boundary between normal aging and accelerated decline can be shaped by countless small conditions that either support the brain or strain it. That is what makes a nightly ritual meaningful. Not because it guarantees protection, but because it repeatedly votes for a healthier internal environment. Think about what that means over 10 or 15 years. Not in a dramatic movie version of aging, but in the ordinary version that unfolds at kitchen tables, in parking lots, during conversations, and in those small pauses when a familiar word suddenly will not come. The future is rarely decided in one event. It is shaped by thousands of nights when the brain is either protected or pressured, nourished or neglected, cleaned efficiently or left struggling against inflammation, poor sleep, and unstable metabolism. That is why modest rituals matter so much. They do not simply change a meal. They change the conditions under which memory fights to stay intact, attention fights to stay sharp, and personality fights to remain unmistakably yours. And the earlier you start protecting those conditions, the more of yourself you may still recognize later. A practical approach is simple. 1 tablespoon of fresh extra virgin olive oil in the evening, ideally as part of a broader pattern that also includes whole foods, adequate protein, movement, blood sugar awareness, and sleep protection. Some people pair it with omega-3 rich foods earlier in the evening, such as salmon or sardines, because omega-3 fats are also central to brain health. The point is not perfection. The point is stacking small advantages before the years remove options. I'm Dr. Marcus. If this changed the way you think about your evenings, tell me your age and the one thing you most want to protect. And if you want more like this, like, subscribe, and comment with the part that stayed with you most.